guys, I've been sitting on this project for far too long and it's time to have some fun this week. So we are going to do a dirty cup and drag acrylic pour over a piece of furniture. Now what you're going to see in this is something that you can do at home on canvas. I'm sure you've seen this a lot online if you're interested in acrylic pouring at all, is that people pour these on the canvases, which is great. That is how I started too. But then I thought, what if I could apply that same technique to furniture? And so I have a friend of mine that wanted this double poured, so that's going to be tricky, but it's going to be fun. We've got some really cool colors that we picked out to match some of the decor in her place. And so follow along on this YouTube tutorial. You are not going to believe how this turns out.
You really are not going to believe how this turns out because I ended up actually having to dump this whole thing and start over, but stay tuned to see why. For this project, we're working with a 2-tiered vintage table. To prep this piece, all I did was wipe the top clean, use a degreaser and clean the surface of the tray, and then I sanded it with just a light buff sand, and then the primer I used is Bonding Primer by Dixie Belle. It's in clear. The rest of the wood was left untouched as my client just wanted the pour to go inside the tray.
Got all my supplies ready. These are the paints that I'm going to be using. So we've got some that are already ready to pour, like the Pouring Masters, and then we've got other older acrylic paints, and then our white ready to pour acrylic. This is our mixing. And then I brought out my very basics pour book because I haven't done this for a while. And it's like a simple reminder on how big you're gonna need and how much fluid you're gonna need. And so it's wonderful. So I've already measured the tops of the diameter. So I'm going to need 16 fluid ounces for the top and approximately 33 for the bottom. I've got some clear cups. I've got some stir sticks, which count as my millions of knives that no one ever uses in the plasticware in my home, and some saran wrap if I need to put a pause on this and wrap everything up as my kids are coming home soon. Some of these paints are going to be a lot thicker than the others, including the ones that are not ready to pour. So this is the turquoise acrylic. Don't mind the noises that it's making. This is turquoise green, and this is very thick. You cannot pour this level of paint, and so we are going to calm it down with some flood. I always use a strainer when I'm pouring my flood because flood loves to have goop in it, or little particles that love to get stuck in it, or it's too thick in some areas. And so I know it looks white, but just trust me in this. It's gonna be so good.
We learned very quickly that a little amount of paint goes a long way, so we ended up just using a tiny bit in the next cups. We did flood first because we ended up having to divide the cups that we had poured too much acrylic paint in, and we made just a ton of paint. But it'll be great for future projects, and my kids love doing acrylic pours on canvas, and so they can reuse those. But if you are using thick acrylic paint like this, you really just want to use a tiny bit. It's not going to really change the color because the flood is basically clear. The goal is to get it dripping off the stir stick, not dripping, but just flowing. It needs to not be goopy at all. It needs to not stick. It just needs to flow off the knife in a thicker but consistent way. Once you're done mixing up your colors, you're going to use just a few drops of silicone per cup. I use about 4 drops of silicone per 8 ounces, and so just depending on how big your cups are, you're going to just add a few drops in. You really can't mess this part up. Each cup is going to pour so different. The silicone's going to be different, and it's going to be beautiful. So don't worry about messing this up. Add a few drops in, and then you want to continually stir it, and then we're going to get ready to pour into the pouring cups.
We've placed our cups out. That's approximately how much paint we're going to need, a little less in each cup on the bottom. We have stirred, and added our silicone in and gotten some help. And now we are ready to start layering and pouring onto the cups.
Now, as soon as I began to pour, I started to realize the mistake I had made. There was too much black, there was too much blue, and there was too much green. I didn't use enough white. I thought I used majority white, but the white started getting covered up by all the other colors that were touching. So of course, naturally, I panicked and just kept going instead of realizing that I needed to stop right then and there and double check with the client because I knew these colors weren't exactly what we were going for. We needed a lot more white and way less black. But I thought maybe she's gonna love it. My 11-year-old is telling me the entire time we're pouring how much he loves it, how much he wants to buy it from her. He's like so excited about it. And so he was like my cheer squad. And so I panicked and I just kept going because naturally I do that, especially with staining projects. I just keep staining thinking the color's going to magically change. But you live and you learn, and yes, all of this was wasted, but it really turned out beautiful. So I'm going to keep going just to show you how beautiful it turned out. So if you want to use these colors on a canvas, my son cannot wait for me to do a huge canvas of these colors in his room. Thankfully, we have a lot left over. So basically, when you're doing a 2-tiered or even just a 1-tiered like this, you want to flip the cups over and then you can punch a hole in the top and drag it like that. I just lift the cup and drag slightly. I let it drip out and then I don't use anything to swipe the cup out. I just let it drip and then I pull it away. Then the color starts spreading. You're going to see cells appear immediately. You're going to see all these colors popping through. It's absolutely mesmerizing to watch. Once you get all your cups flipped, then you begin rotating your surface and letting the colors slide around and get where they need to go. If you have any spots where it's not flowing to, you can add a little bit more from your overfill cups to those areas, or you can use your finger to just kind of guide the paint around and make sure that it's filling into all the gaps. What do you think about these colors? Now, comment below and just let me know if this would be your pick. I do think it doesn't complement the antique style of the wood, but it would look really cool on a canvas. I wish we could have kept this. I wish I could have just like lifted it up and put it right on a canvas for my son, but unfortunately that is not how paint works. Once it is on the surface of a pour, you really can't move it around much at all once you have it where you want it. Now, to finish up a pour like this, you would use a butane torch. Now I've linked one in the description below or right underneath in the shopping category, where the butane torch just helps get all the bubbles to rise to the surface so that you don't have any bubbles trapped in there when it's drying. And it also helps some of the colors and the silicone come to the surface to create more cells. When my client and I spoke over the phone, I could tell that she was being so kind, and she said it would totally grow on her. She thought it was really cool. She thought it would definitely have more white, and I could just tell by the tone in her voice. She is the kindest person in the world, but I wanted to get her what she wanted originally. And so I said, you know what, let me mess with a little bit and see if I can get more white. I thought if I could get some of the colors from the top flowing off, it might get a little bit more white, but unfortunately that's not how pours work. And so I did end up dumping the full thing, but I knew with the colors that I had left that I could do a way better job the second time around to get a lot more white, a little bit of blues, and a lot less black and green, if any. So I'm going to show you how we fixed this. I cleaned this off with soap and water, let it dry, and then came back to it just a few hours later, and I did a different technique, and I can't wait to show you. I hadn't tried either of these techniques before, but I looked in my little beginner's basic book and then I YouTubed a few things, and I knew that using the hairdryer method was going to work a lot better, especially for shifting the paint around the table. So I went inside, I got my expensive blow dryer and my little nozzle attachment, and I knew that I could try this, and if anything, it wasn't gonna be any worse than before. And so I used the Pouring Masters white paint, and I just poured that on the surface first. And so I made sure that that was flowy enough, and then I added a little bit more navy color with a little bit of that turquoise and the gold, and then I used that hairdryer to push it out, and that was going to get the silicone around too. And then I used the swipe technique to pour white along the edges, and I used a wet paper towel to drag the white over the surface. this created a really cool effect, and I believe this is how they do some of those beach scenes on wood blocks. I don't know if you guys have seen those at craft fairs, but I think they use the swipe method, which is just really fun. It was really cool to do. So what do you think about how it turned out finally? I did butane torch the top of this, and it is currently drying, and in about 7 to 10 days, once it fully dries, and it's in a safe place right now, then we are going to do an epoxy pour on the top. So stay tuned for that video. Comment below, like and share this, you guys. Your support means the world to me. And if you want any of these materials, see below in the shopping link or in the description. I'll see you guys next week.